John Ross Show on the 15th of January, 2025, and it's 16 degrees out there. So it's cool. That snow is from Chicago, I want to tell you. It's not from downtown Batavia here. And so welcome everybody to the John Ross Show. And we have a special guest today. And today's guest is Dr. Vincent Bacote of Wheaton College, professor of theology, director of the Center of Applied Christian Ethics. So that's a lot of mouthful, but it means quite a bit. We need ethics, and that's basically what it is. He's trying to teach us how to think more about ethics, which is a very good thing. And I'm going to show that. Maybe I should show. I think I'm going to show that book right now to Dr. Vincent.
Sounds good.
It's from a few years ago, but it still has, I think it still has some relevance. It's about getting involved in the political arena. And what did I do there? Okay, it's at the bottom there. Okay, here comes the book. No, that's the wrong book. That's the wrong book.
I haven't written about Stalin. I mean, maybe that'll be a future one for me.
Oh, here it is. I had that if I was talking. Anyway, here's the book, and The Political Disciple, Public Life. That is, yeah, we want to be in the public life. That's where we want to be engaged. And so that's why I brought Dr. Bacote here to engage us in our public life. So I think the topic, this is pretty broad topic, so we can cover a lot of different things. I think Christian ethics for the country and the church. So welcome, Dr. Bacote. And it's been a few years since I've talked to you. I think it was before COVID or right after. I forgot. It's been a while.
Yeah.
And we haven't had these shows in a while. So I'm really happy that you could join me. So thank you for doing this.
Glad to be back.
Yes. I'm going to ask you a first question. What do you think of the Christian ethics today? What's your, I don't know, barometer or thermometer or whatever you want to say? How does it look today compared maybe some other times, or what do you think where we're at right now?
Sure. I think, I mean, at one level, you can always say it's all over the place, but I think particularly for people that identify themselves as some kind of Christian that takes the Bible very seriously, I do think we have a time of ethical complication for some, maybe even for many, because people they're thinking about their lives. They're thinking about what their lives should be in the country. And there are different ways that people are dealing with, various forms of distress. I mean, whether you're on the right, the left, the middle, unaffiliated, whatever. I think we have a challenge where for some people, I think, if you ask them, okay, what is right or what's wrong, I think sometimes the way that people will identify that they're thinking about, what I think they're thinking about important things, but as they think about those important things, my sense is that we may be in a time where there's a great sense in which what people call control beliefs, which are the beliefs that steer the car, so to speak, that people who say that the Bible is steering the car, that it's not completely clear that the Bible is really steering the car. I mean, really, it's Jesus who's steering the car, right? But the Bible is the source of authority. I think a lot of times other commitments are also steering the car. And sometimes I think people are almost brazen about that. I mean, if you ask them, hey, are you a Jesus person? Are you committed to these things? They say yes. But when they start talking about some of their commitments, it's not clear that those commitments are more informed by what they believe about their faith than it is about what they believe about some dimension of the culture or some dimension of politics, or some dimension of the pursuit of self-fulfillment, the life that I ought to have in a country like the United States. And so I think that we have the complication of people who I'll just use this as an example. I mean, a number of people have talked about this. I've even had students, I mean, colleagues talk about this. If someone is reading about Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, or Acts chapter 2, when it talks about them having all things in common, I mean, there have been students that have said to my colleagues, that sounds like communism to me. Or people will say, what are these liberal ideas?
Right.
So I think sometimes
Are
you
you talking about
have,
that Communist Chapter X too?
well, it says they held everything in common, right? Yeah, right. So, and of course, the thing is that nobody was thinking about communism back then. They were in the Roman Empire, so even if they wanted to think about it, they couldn't be, they couldn't put it into practice. And so what I mean by I just use those examples. I mean, they're examples that are right leaning ones, but they're examples of how people are thinking about what's right or what's wrong is determined more by, okay, some other set of commitments that are telling me about what's right or what's wrong, or even as some have said, they're here. Hey, Jesus said we should do X, Y, or Z. Some people are like, well, no, yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, but that's not going to work right now because it's too weak. We need something stronger,
Okay.
because of people feeling that they're opposed. And I think, equally, if I swing it more to the left in a way, I think that there are ways that people think about, I ought to be able to make whatever lifestyle choices I want because I don't want to be a person that ever is the hater or that ever is making somebody feel bad about, whatever kind of choice that they're deciding to make.
Okay.
And sometimes the way that discourse works out is, well, what's determining how you think what's right or wrong? Well, you want to, and this is a good thing, you want to care about people, you want to seek what's best for them, but there's an unwillingness to say, well, maybe that's not the best idea,
Yeah.
or maybe certain choices aren't the best choices. And sometimes I think that's a reaction to people being in more conservative settings where all your choices are being like commanded, or you're being told what you should do, what you should think about
Okay.
everything. And the reaction to that is, I don't want to be that person.
Okay.
And I don't want people to feel targeted.
Right.
And because I don't, then again, the commitment is, I don't want people to feel bad. Okay, that's good. But what's your basis for making that choice? Is it about what's right
Yeah.
or wrong?
Yeah.
Or is it you're reacting to a way that people wanted to have a kind of biblical moral standard, as they called it,
We want
but
to
their
do,
way of
but we
practicing
don't want.
it? What's that?
It's we don't want to judge someone, right? We don't
Yeah, yeah.
judge.
I mean, don't want to be judgmental, and also because of being in situations where sometimes people have been very judgmental. Now, of course, I mean, if we're honest and we look, especially in our high social media society, I mean, judgment comes from all directions,
Right.
and of all kinds of commitments. And so, I mean, to me, the challenge with Christian ethics is to say, do you really want to be someone who says, um, I am a person who wants to be directed by God, led by God, and I'm trying to discern in my best interaction with what the Bible teaches and how the Christian tradition has talked about Christian beliefs. I'm trying to do this as faithfully as possible, learn about it as well as I can, keep sharpening my beliefs, and out of that, you know, develop practices of moral discernment. And uh, there's so many voices in our media saturated landscape that I think sometimes even if people want to do that, they can get confused because you'll have all these people who say, "Well, I've got that commitment," and if a person says something you like, or they're an effective communicator, sometimes people will say, "Oh, I'm going to go with that person."
Right.
Well,
The
I'm going to
last
go with that
person you
person
hear,
because that
maybe.
person critiques somebody that I don't like. So, uh, and so I think we need more discernment than just somebody critiquing someone that I don't like. Uh, so I think the challenge is to really say, all right, how well do I actually understand my beliefs and my commitments, and am I willing
Right.
to ask whether there are commitments that I have, or that each person would ask this: are there commitments that I have that might be calling the shots, but I didn't know they were calling the shots? They're just kind of unacknowledged authorities in my life. And so to me, I think that's one of the biggest things, because I think one of the interesting things, if you think about how ethical decision making works, I think a lot of Christians people want to say, okay, the Bible tells me what to think, and I just want to go from what the Bible teaches to making particular choices.
Right.
But if you really think about what goes into how people are making decisions, they are thinking about all these other factors in their lives, and they formed their lives being, in relating to these other factors, and they've developed certain kinds of beliefs and commitments around those things, and those things, we have to be willing to look at them and say, hey, is this actually functioning for me in a way where actually I want my faith to sponsor that commitment rather than that faith to interrogate it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things out there to just trying to influence us, as you
Yeah. Yes.
alluding to. And I was just, this is not new, but the church does not have much influence because it only has sometimes maybe only 1 hour a week, maybe with a sermon, if there's that. Maybe there's some fellowship groups that would get a little higher, but all the media, all the other things, all the emails, texts, you can go down the list, social media have influence on us. I was
A
just
culture
thinking
of
about if,
distraction
if we
definitely
don't
makes it
have
challenging.
ourselves personally in good ethics, how can we give it to the country?
That does become a challenge, and I think what's also a challenge with even what goes on with whatever we're giving to the country is, I think there's probably still a greater tendency among most citizens in the United States to say, okay, whoever's in office, I mean, that's kind of your job to do that stuff, or you're the boards of these corporations, it's your job to do that stuff. I mean, I may complain about it, but how much am I writing to people?
Oh, I see. You say they don't get involved in the thinking
Yeah,
of that
yeah,
they're part of the, well, we would say the solution or part
yeah,
of the
yeah.
answer. They just go along.
Well, I'm saying that the Christ, it's not so much they in a way go along, or they say, um, the way that I'm going to think about addressing, say if I don't like who's in office locally, nationally, or whatever, am I just waiting for 4 years or for 2 years when it comes to
Right,
the midterm elections? Um, I think a lot of times, with people who goes, okay, well, I'm just going to get on with my life and try to do the best I can.
right.
I think it has to get to a certain level of crisis before you get, large movements.
So you get
But I think that,
well,
but I think,
certain it will affect you a certain crisis, and your Christianity will come in then, but you
yeah,
won't.
yeah, yeah,
You'll just, I don't know, want to use the word relax, but not engage really.
yeah. Well, and I think another thing, honestly, that's a challenge in the moment as well is that, I mean, if you look at probably what the statistics are, when people talk about political polarization, for example, or cultural
Right,
polarization in our society, the loudest and most extreme voices are maybe 6 to 8% on either side, left or right. And
right,
so I once, read this term about the people in the middle called the exhausted middle. So a lot of people in
right.
the exhausted middle are like, I just don't want to have anything to do with that stuff. And so that also leads to maybe an unintentional apathy in terms of how much people want to try to put any energy towards, making something better beyond perhaps what's happening in their family and in the smaller circles of relationship.
I haven't. This is sort of maybe. I hope you can think on this one. This is about Germany before Hitler.
Yeah.
Why do you think the churches and ethics were involved then? You got any thoughts? Have you done any
Well,
research
well,
on that, or how did they?
why did that happen?
How did this happen in Germany? Was there a church involved at all, really, or what's your thought on that?
Well, one contrast between what was going on in Germany and there is one, they had a state church, which was a Lutheran
Right,
church.
that's true.
And basically, the government made a kind of deal with the church. I mean, and the church agreed not to be a voice that was in opposition to
That's where Bonhoeffer tried to do
development.
something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Bonhoeffer and others. You're right, um, and so that's a big part of what happened. And also, of course, prior to that, if you think about, coming out of World War I, Germany's kind of humiliated, and then you start having, the emergence of people who are talking about, national pride and a lot of Germans say, well, I'm for that. Why not? And so, it'd be interesting to think about. I mean, how many people in 1932, 1933 thought, okay, if this guy gets in, is this really going to lead to what did happen?
Right,
And so I think that's also part of it. I mean, did they know that they were going to have a dictator? They may not have known that. And so, um, I think, if there's a lesson for us, I would say is this: in the United States, and a lot of Western countries are unique in the level of political agency that citizens have, and that level of political agency means that you're actually a person that could even run for office. You can start local and maybe get up beyond that. Um, but and also, uh, you know, your your representatives are always sending you mail and stuff and asking you to write to them. You can really do those things. And
right,
if you have a group of people, if you get a group of 20 people to write to somebody, people take notice to that a lot of the
right.
time. So now that isn't every case that going to work. No, but in a lot of cases it does. And so I think, um, part of the problem, for at least for the United States, is even with the complaints that we still have a kind of prosperity problem relative to the rest of the world, right? I mean, because whatever challenges we have, and however much we're talking about the 1% versus people that aren't doing as well as the 1%, the United States in general is still a pretty comfortable place in
Right.
terms of people's lives in general, right? And so, because of that, even though we know stories about all kinds of distresses, the general populace is not saying we're worried about our current state of poverty and we're going to be really noisy about this. I think instead, that part is part of this American ethos. Hey, we're still this country where if you figure out the right way, you get to be the next story that we promote about how you became the next success.
Right.
You went from the gutter to the palace. So,
Right.
and so I think because we have all that kind of reality around us, uh, I think, and even if most people aren't having those specific kinds of stories, we hear enough of them.
Well, that's individual, so the
Yeah,
church or others don't have to be involved. It's an individual thing then.
it is. But the point is that again, it's the air that people are breathing, and so you have to help people to think about what should they be believing, what should their commitments be, and their commitment shouldn't be mainly about just how do I enrich myself. I mean, there's not a
Right.
problem with people doing well. But there's a problem if you think that the only thing you need to do is just get yours and show others how to get theirs. I mean, the question is, well, how am I thinking about whatever privilege I have? How is that something to steward? How is that, a kind of privilege that I have to not just benefit myself, but to find ways to leverage that for others?
Well, it's like I'm going to bring up a moment about the fires out in California. How we respond to that? Do we help these people, or are we just saying, oh, they are all rich? That's a rich area. They just they don't really
Yeah.
need the help. We just don't need to do that. And they have to do this before we give them help.
Yeah.
That's a new approach I've heard.
Well, some people are saying that, but I think what I'm seeing and what I'm aware of, based on some people I know in ministry out there, there's a lot of people that are pulling together, and people are sending money, and
Right.
people are going there to help everybody, no matter who it is, whether you're loaded or not. I mean, the loss is devastating.
I
Uh,
think it's
and,
like that one well, it's not a parable. They asked Jesus about this uh, wall falling down, and I forgot what the other one. Herod was doing some killing,
yeah,
and
yeah,
Jesus just says basically, it's we don't know our time, basically.
right. Yeah, I mean, it could happen to anyone. And the I think the important thing is that the Christian response should not be based on whether I think somebody deserves my help or not. Love
Right.
your neighbor is not, again. There is some asterisk where the asterisk means, well, except for people who never need help, because we hear enough stories about the fact that, okay, there are people with lots of money, lots of possessions, etc. None of that tells us about their quality of their internal life.
Right.
We don't know what else is going on with them. We don't know what other distresses they might be having, and so I think um, you find ways to be, if you're able to help people, you help them, and you decide to seek the good. You certainly don't give favoritism to people, especially in a situation like this, to only to those of means.
Right.
You seek the good of all people, and you make sure that everybody uh, has a sense of being respected.
Yeah, that's about the fires out there, and
Yeah,
I've been, I do bell ringing and other things, and those type of things. So I always think of the Salvation Army as one group. There's others. I know
sure.
there's several other
Yeah,
Christian
and
groups and
there's lots of,
churches. Huh?
yeah, there are lots of churches that have really pulled together out
So here's
there.
here's just one example:
Yeah,
Salvation
yeah,
Army, USA.org,
yeah.
and it's just one example.
Yeah.
Why I had Jimmy Carter there, I was wondering
Hmm.
what your thought. A lot of people would say Jimmy Carter had what we call character.
He did, but you also read that, in terms of the other presidents club, he had a kind of challenged relationship with them because he was kind of a free agent, right? He wouldn't just
Oh,
necessarily
I
do.
understand that. I'm just
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
about his Christian.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, no, no.
I mean, the character. I mean, I was going to ethics here, basically.
Yeah.
He was. I haven't heard anything
Yes. Yeah.
unethical about him.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
Oh no, absolutely. No, and I guess my point is that Jimmy Carter is one of the great, like, second acts. First of all, after being out of office,
Oh, the
uh,
second act when he did Habitat and all these
yeah,
other things,
all
the
those
Peace,
things.
the
Yes,
center and
yes,
everything. Yeah.
yes, yes. But the reason I'm mentioning his personality is that I think it's important just to understand that he had these commitments to seeking the good of people, and he really did seem to put those things into practice. It's just also important that when we say that we can affirm that without saying that there weren't complications in like his other relationships with other presidents, or or sometimes, even like when Randall Balmer, was writing this book about him, he said that sometimes there were challenges, writing this biography about Carter, in terms of the way the line was that he was a sometimes prickly person, is what people would say. Not that he wasn't a nice person, a caring person. He was a very hardworking, dedicated, visionary person who um, taught Sunday school,
Right.
continued to teach Sunday school even when he was a person of high prominence, and certainly was a person that sought to live out expressions of neighbor love. It's inescapable when you look at the trajectory of his life.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I just think he was a person, somewhat of an example of what we're being political in the life. Of
Yeah,
course,
I
nobody's
would say
perfect here
especially
on
after he
this,
got
but
out.
he's one example.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I would say, especially after he got out. because there are lots of things that one could do. Like he didn't. He was not only a person that sought to do good, but he was also a person that tried to not be think too much of himself is what I would say.
Right. No,
Right.
I think so.
So
And
so
he
I,
was,
I think I think there was
mhm,
a kind of intentional humility that
right,
he had.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you for spending a little time with me
Sure.
here today. And
Sure.
I'm
We
on
could.
Friday, we're going to have a friend who I just actually I taped this yesterday. Reverend Hasham Shabab is coming on Friday. He's going to talk about Lebanon and Syria,
Okay.
and he knows people in that area. He's from there, and he found Jesus on through the Sermon on the Mount,
Oh,
really.
wow. Fascinating.
And I've heard a lot of Muslims and from the Middle East that that's a significant section in the Bible of Jesus' teaching,
Right.
and it differentiates them. It differentiates Jesus from Muhammad there.
Right.
And well, he's going to be visiting. We're going to discuss the Middle East there. So that's and next Monday we're going to have Dr. Vincent Gaddis is going to be with me, a professor of history over at Elgin Community.
Oh.
And then down at the end of the month, I want to have my friend David Swanson from Chicago. He's got a book called Plundered,
Mhm.
and it's about
It's probably the environment, right?
racial and environmental
Yeah. Yeah.
injustices go together.
Yeah. He's a former student of mine.
Okay, well then
Yeah.
you got a listener here. Get his book. I got to get his book too, but
Yeah.
it's a new book. Just came out from university. So it sounds like, and he's got a good work there in Chicago with the Covenant Church down there. So he's going to be visiting with me the end of the month on the 31st. So Dr. Bacote, we were playing earlier with. I don't want to do it anymore about your name. I'm so sorry if I've ever done anything wrong there. And he's a good man and doing good there at Wheaton College. And we need more people like that. That's I went to the grad school there, and Wheaton's got a history of doing action and the founding with Blanchard there, and from the Civil War period and all that. So we appreciate Wheaton College and Dr. Bacote and what he's doing, and we gotta get those ethics out there. And I appreciate his work. And you got to get another book here, write another book here.
I'm
Uh,
trying.
huh?
I'm trying.
I know these things can. I don't know how Jimmy Carter did it, but he wrote 32 books. I mean, some people just keep writing it. I know a guy with a Travis Thrasher who wasn't moved, he moved on. He's written about 70 books. He could write 4 books a year or something. I don't know how he does. Those were novels, but
Amazing.
some
Amazing.
people just can,
Exactly.
just the words come out so easily.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Bigot, thank you very much for coming by. And for now, we'll just say bye bye till next time. And God bless. And again, thank you. Thanks to Dr. Vincent Bacote here for being with me today. Thank you, Doctor. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.